Let's be honest. Building with AI is probably one of the most exciting things a developer can be doing right now. But actually figuring out what it's all going to cost, that can feel like trying to solve a puzzle in the dark. It's often the single biggest hurdle that stops a great idea from ever getting off the ground. So that's the big question, right? What is this actually going to cost me? Well, in this explainer, we are going to pull back the curtain on Google Cloud AI pricing. We're going to take that super complex, kind of confusing cost structure and turn it into a clear framework you can actually use to make decisions. All right, let's get into it. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the absolute basics of Google Cloud pricing. Then we'll look at some of the more specialized models for when you need predictable and secure setups. After that, we'll get practical and price out an AI conversation. Then we're diving deep into Vertex AI and the whole pay-per-token model, comparing Google's own models against some partners. And we'll wrap it all up with some real-world tips for optimizing your spend. Okay, first things first. Before we can even start talking about the cool, complex AI models, we have to get a handle on the basic principles that drive all pricing on Google Cloud. You can think of these as the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about. And really, the best place to start is right here, with this number. Google gives all new users $300 in free credits to use over 90 days. Seriously, this is your sandbox, your playground. It is the absolute perfect way to experiment, to try things, to break things, and to test out your ideas without any financial risk at all. Now, beyond those initial credits, the core philosophy is simple. You only pay for what you actually use. This really breaks down into a few key models. You've got the free tier, which gives you a certain amount of popular services every month completely free. Then there's on demand, which is that classic pay-as-you-go model. But the part that I think is really cool is the sustained use discounts. So if you run something like a virtual machine for most of the month, Google just automatically gives you a discount. You don't have to call anyone, you don't have to negotiate, it just happens. Okay, so we've got that flexible pay-as-you-go model down. But what happens when your needs get a little more specialized? Sometimes you care less about flexibility and more about having a predictable budget or just absolutely rock-solid security. So let's see how Google handles that. So just imagine for a second that your team is running a ton of database queries, like all day, every day. With that on-demand model, your bill would be all over the place, totally unpredictable. And that's exactly where a flat rate option comes in. For a service like BigQuery, you can just pay a fixed monthly fee for a set amount of processing power. Your bill is the exact same no matter how many queries you run, which makes planning your budget way, way easier. And security is another one of those areas where the standard models don't always cut it. For industries like finance or healthcare, there are often strict regulations that literally forbid you from sharing computer hardware with other companies. That's the exact problem that sole tenant nodes solve. Like the quote says, you are getting dedicated hardware. You're essentially paying for an entire physical machine, all to yourself, guaranteeing that total data isolation you need to meet those tough compliance rules. Okay, time to make this a little more real. How do all these ideas actually apply to an AI service? We're going to use Dialogflow, which is Google's tool for building things like chatbots and voice assistants, as our case study. This slide tells a really interesting story about how pricing philosophy can evolve. Over on the right, you have the classic model, which is super granular. You kind of get nickel and dimed for extras like sentiment analysis. But now look at the modern CX model on the left. It's just simpler. Sure, the per-request fee looks a little higher, but key features are all bundled in, and the voice billing is much more straightforward. This tells you that Google is moving towards making things more predictable for developers, which is a huge win. All right, now we're getting to the absolute heart of modern AI costs. Because when we start talking about the big, large language models like Gemini, we're not billing in minutes or requests anymore. The whole game is based on this tiny little unit of measurement called a token. So, what on earth is a token? Well, this is the fundamental currency of generative AI. Just think of them as pieces of words. An AI model doesn't really see the word explainer. It might see it as two tokens, explain and er. A really good rule of thumb, especially for English, is that about 4 characters of text equals 1 token. And every single part of your prompt and every single part of the model's response gets measured and billed in these tiny little units. So with that idea of tokens fresh in our minds, let's take a look at the actual pricing for Google's flagship models on the Vertex AI platform, the Gemini family. Now, this table shows us 2 incredibly important things about AI pricing. First, check out the input and output columns.
It costs you money to send your prompt to the model, but it costs you significantly more for the model to generate a response for you. And second, look at the huge difference between Pro and Flash. Pro is the absolute powerhouse model, and you're paying a premium for that power. Flash is built for speed and efficiency, and it costs about a quarter of the price. You are making a very direct trade-off between getting maximum power versus being cost-effective.
But here's where it gets really interesting. You aren't just locked into using Google's models. Vertex AI is a true marketplace. It gives you direct access to some of the leading models from other huge players in the AI space. Honestly, this is a complete game changer for developers. You can run models from companies like Meta and OpenAI right inside the Google Cloud ecosystem. What this means is you can pick the absolute best tool for your specific job based on performance, special features, and, of course, the price. This comparison really highlights the kind of strategic decisions you get to make. Look at this. Google's Gemini Flash is super cheap on the way in. Meta's Llama 4 is a tiny bit more for input, but way cheaper for the output. And then you got OpenAI's model, which is the most affordable on both ends. So if your app sends short prompts but needs long, detailed answers, Llama might actually be the most cost-effective choice. If you just need the cheapest possible option for balanced tasks, OpenAI could be your winner. This isn't just a price list, it's a menu of different cost profiles that you can match to how your app actually behaves. Okay, so with all of these models and pricing options, how do you actually manage your costs and make sure your AI bill doesn't just spiral out of control? Let's bring it all home with some real, actionable takeaways. So let's turn all this knowledge into a strategy. First up, start smart. Use those free credits to experiment and find out what works. Second, choose wisely. Please don't just default to the biggest, most powerful model if a cheaper, faster one gets the job done. Third, if a task isn't super time sensitive, batch it up. Using batch APIs can get you a massive discount, sometimes up to 50%. And finally, let Google do some of the work for you. Use the built-in cost management tools to keep an eye on your spending, and let a tool like Active Assist literally find savings for you automatically. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We've already seen models like Flash become much cheaper and faster than the ones that came before them. But at the same time, as these tools get more and more capable, we're going to find more ways to use them, which means we'll probably be processing more data than ever before. So the big question is, will your AI bill actually shrink or will it grow? The future isn't just about the cost of a single token. It's about how much value you can create with it.